So thank you for being together this evening for our ongoing discussion of Srimad Bhagavatam. We will be resuming our discussion from Canto 1, Chapter 6, verse 33. So we'll start with our Mandacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Cheva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jaya Udire Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. So I'm happy to be back after missing last week while I was in India. We had discussed the 1632 verse in the week before last, and quick recap that these two chapters are Narad's discussion with Srila Vyasadeva about his own previous life, which essentially he is using as a preaching point. He is essentially using it to exemplify the glories of bhakti and the process of making devotional advancement. So he had gone through this journey of him being born as a Dashi Putra, of getting the mercy of the Bhaktivedantas, losing his mother, traveling through a forest, meditating and seeing Krishna, Krishna disappearing, and Krishna reappearing in form of his instructions, Narad Muni following through with the instructions. So this is where in the last verse it had ended with Narad Muni sharing with Vyas how he spent the rest of his life after receiving the instructions from Krishna, which was basically according to the instructions of Krishna. That he had mentioned how without any envy, with full patience, he meditated, he sang the glories of Krishna, and in this way, ultimately, he met with his. He met with he met with his end. He received the position of being the associate of Krishna, and the previous verse talks about Narad Muni receiving the veena given to him by Krishna, and how he is constantly traveling and glorifying Krishna by transmitting the transcendental messages. So just a point of trivia that the source of veena to Narad Muni is described differently in different scriptures. And it does not mean that one is wrong and other is right. It just means that there may be what is known as kalpa bhedas, or something that we may not understand fully. But in Garg Samhita, it is mentioned that Narad Muni receives the veena from Saraswati Devi after performing severe austerities. In other Puranas, it's mentioned that Narad Muni receives the veena from Lakshmi Devi with a request to use it for glorification of her husband. Somewhere else it's mentioned that he received it from the Devas also, but regardless of where he received it, he uses it for the same purpose. So we'll resume from 1633. Pragayata sa viryavani tirthapada priyashravaha ahuta iva me sigram darshanam yati chetashi. The Supreme Lord Shri Krishna, whose transcendental glories, whose glories and activities are pleasing to hear, at once appears on the seat of my heart as if called for, as soon as I begin to chant his holy activities. So this is the concluding verse from Narad about his recounting his past and present life to Srila Vyasadeva. So at the beginning of this spiritual journey, Krishna had appeared in the heart of Narad and quickly disappeared. So this had happened, Narad had described that in the 16th verse of this chapter. But then Krishna had also promised Narad that by engaging in firm devotional service, Krishna had said that you will get my personal association in the 23rd verse. So Narad had followed through. He had scrupulously adhered to the instructions of Krishna, and now Krishna follows through with his assurance. So we see in this verse, Narad Muni is saying that Krishna at once appears. So he says Yati, he says appears in his sight, Darshanam, Shigram. Shigram means very soon, without delay, Chetashi. So Chetashi is heart, also means consciousness. So Narad uses both the verbs, Darshanam, Chetashi, and to indicate that his senses are purified now. Sometimes when we see, the way we process it is a little differently because they go through the filter of the modes of material nature. But Krishna is appearing both Darshanam, Chetashi. So he's appearing in his sight and he's appearing in his heart or consciousness, Ahutaha Iva. So Narad uses the word Ahutaha Iva. So Ahuta means summoned. But he immediately follows it with Iva. So Iva means as if. So Narad does not want to indicate that Krishna has become subservient to him. Then Narad summons Krishna and Krishna appears. Even the process of bhakti, that is so transcendental, does not really impinge on Krishna's supreme independence. Just like a child does not really make the father subservient, but the father chooses to appear so completely out of affection. So that's why Narad says, Ahuta Iva, that as if summoned. So it's not that he's summoning Krishna and Krishna is appearing, but Krishna's reciprocation gives that impression. But the source of the reciprocation is actually Krishna's affection for Narad. So what is the udipan for this? What is the impetus for this? What is it that summons Krishna quickly to both the darshanam and chetasham? So Narad Muni says, pragyata. He says that when I am singing, and what is he singing? Swaviryani, own activities. Swa means one's own activities of Tirthapat, of Krishna. So when Narad is glorifying Krishna, Swaviryani, so Viryavan literally translates to chivalrous, but also means all kinds of activities. Swa means of the self, and the self here points to Tirthapad. So Tirthapad is, Pad is foot, and Tirtha is a place of pilgrimage. So one of Krishna's name is Tirthapad because his lotus feet is a place of pilgrimage for the transcendentalist or the spiritualist. It also means that one whose lotus feet is the source of all virtues or holiness. So Narad Muni goes and says that these pastimes are Priya Shrava. Shrava means hear, and Priya means pleasing to hear for the devotees. So this is the Udipan, that whenever Narad Muni, he is singing these pastimes of Krishna that are pleasing to hear, How does Krishna reciprocate? He quickly appears in the heart of and the sight of Narad. So Prabhupada mentions that even Krishna is pleased to hear the recitation of his own pastimes. Because we all know that the devotees enjoy listening to the pastimes of Krishna. But this verse tells us something even more, that even Krishna enjoys listening to his own pastimes. And that is why Prabhupada says that Krishna is not different from his pastimes. One should not be astonished to see Krishna personally appear where Krishna Katha is being done. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, it is a natural psychology in every individual case that a person likes to hear and enjoy his personal glories enumerated by others. That is a natural instinct. And the Lord, being also an individual personality like others, is not an exception to this psychology, because psychological characteristics visible in the individual's souls are but reflections of the same psychology in the absolute Lord. The only difference is that the Lord is the greatest personality of all and absolute in all his affairs. It is therefore the Lord is attracted by the pure devotees chanting of his glories. There is nothing astonishing. Since he is absolute, he can appear himself in the picture of his glorification, the two things being identical. Shri Narada chants the glorification of the Lord not for his personal benefit, but because the glorification are identical with the Lord. Narad Muni penetrates into the presence of the Lord by the transcendental chanting. So, in essence, that is what the Bhagavatam is. Bhagavatam is the glories of the pastimes of the Lord, and that is why we say that the Bhagavatam is the sound incarnation of Krishna. Just like Krishna's name is the sound incarnation of him, the Bhagavatam is because Prabhupada explains in the purport that his pastimes are non-different from him. So Narad Muni has now finished recounting his journey to perfection. So this is for Vyasadeva. It's also a roadmap for us as devotees who are aspiring to make spiritual progress. So Narad Muni was born in unfavorable circumstances as a Shudra Dasi Putra, and we are also. We are born in this age of Kali where spirituality is very weak. Then Narad Muni comes in contact with devotees through some Agyat Sukriti, and so do we. So have we. We have come in contact with devotees. So the spiritual life of Narad Muni begins when he somehow or other else begins to serve these devotees. First by rendering some menial service to them, and then he serves them by listening attentively to them. And we can also relate to that. In reciprocation, the devotees or the Bhakti Vedantas, they extend their mercy to Krishna. And we also, at different points in our life, and even now, are recipients of the mercy of other devotees, because either we are rendering service to them by actually rendering service or through following their instructions. So what did Narad Muni do next? By following the instructions that he had received, he transcends the mode of passion and ignorance. That's what we are aspiring to do. Then, while situated in the mode of goodness, Narad Muni remains steadfast in the face of both natural and man-made distractions. So remember, he talks about his passage through forests and cities. So the forests are natural and cities are man-made distractions. He remains steadfast in purity and contamination, in peace and agitation. So remember his association with the river lake, how he drank the water of the river lake. And we discussed the metaphor of river lake, that it's a combination of the river being agitated, but the lake being peaceful, the river being pure, but the lake being contaminated. So it was a metaphor of our material situation. And then Narad Muni takes shelter of the banyan tree, which is again a metaphor for material entrapment and freedom. The banyan tree is described in the 15th chapter as the materially entanglement of Maya Devi, but the banyan tree also is also the shelter of many spiritualists. So we see Narad Muni going through situations that we ourselves are going through. We are trying to transcend the modes of passion and ignorance by following the four regulative principles, staying steady in the mode of goodness. We are exposed to all kinds of distractions, whether artificial or natural. We are also at the confluence of purity, contamination, peace, and agitation. And in all this, Narad Muni remains steadfast in following the instructions of the Bhakti Vedantas. So how does Krishna respond? So Krishna responds by giving Narad a taste, a small taste of Shuddha Bhakti by appearing personally in his heart. To some extent, we have also experienced that. We have, and hopefully we continue to do so, that we get glimpses of Shuddha Bhakti, sometimes during our chanting, sometimes during deity worship, sometimes during the study of the scriptures. And then Krishna disappeared. We can definitely attest to that Krishna comes and goes. Some days the chanting is better than other. But when Krishna disappears, he leaves behind Narad Muni his instructions. And we also have access to Krishna's instructions through the scriptures and our Guru Maharaj. So the Narad Muni, by the pain that he suffered in his hankering for Krishna and the pleasure that he experienced in the service of the absolute truth, destroyed both the reactions to his impious and pious activities. So the reaction to impious activities is pain, and the reaction to pious activities is pleasure. But both these reactions were now subsumed within the spiritual endeavor of Narad Muni. That the pain that he suffered from the hankering of the absence of Krishna was far more than any pain that would come to him because of impious activities. And the pleasure that he experienced serving Krishna and his devotees was far more than the pleasure that he would have experienced because of his pious activities. So in this way, the reactions to his impious and pious activities were destroyed. And Narad Muni continues to follow this in a peaceful, unenvious, patient, and hopeful mood. And that's the recommendation for us as practicing devotees, that as we do what we are asked to do, our frame of mind is hopeful, it is patient, because there will be reversals, things will not happen as quickly as we want, peaceful and unenvious. And in the end, just like Narad Muni attained the personal association of Krishna, he's promising us the same result also. So this ends the discourse of Narad Muni about his journey for his personal journey for perfection. And in the next set of verses, Narad will give his concluding instructions to Vyasadeva and depart. So verse 34, but any questions, comments on this one? Okay, so we'll do 1634. Etadhyatura chittana matra sparshe chaya muhu avasindhu plavadrishto haricharya anuvarnanam. It is personally experienced by me that those who are always full of cares and anxieties due to desiring contact of the senses with their objects can cross the ocean of nations on a most suitable boat. The constant chanting of the transcendental activities of the personality of Godhead. So Narad Muni is now concluding his conversation with Srila Vyasadeva and basically bringing the principle forth. So he was not sharing his history with Vyasadeva just in terms of idle conversation or boasting, but in order to make a point. And this is the point that the point that he's making was made implicit earlier on and will be made explicit in this next set of 5 verses. So Nagmuni is saying that people in general are atur chittana. So atur chittana means they're conscious, and atur means they're very anxious. Anxiety is basically comes out of fear of unknown. So they're constantly wondering that what will tomorrow bring to me? Happiness or distress, health or disease. So that is, it is atur chittana. And mainly because of the source of it is, Narad Muni says, matra sparshas. That because of the contact of the senses with the objects. So matra sparshas is one of the first instructions. It appears in one of the first instructions given by Krishna to Arjuna. Does anybody remember that verse? It appears in the 2nd chapter.
Matra sparshasthu kaunteya shitoshna sukha agama paino nityastam satiksha bharata.
Good, thank you very much. So Narad Muni is using it in almost exactly the same context. Like Krishna is saying that matra sparshasthu kaunteya shitosana sukha that the cause of happiness and distress is matra sparshas. Narad Muni is using it in exactly the same context. He's saying atur chittana matra sparshas. That because of this contact of the senses, one becomes atur chittana, and because of ichya, because of desires. But Narad Muni at this point is not leaving Vyas with just the problem. He has used his own life to demonstrate the solution. He's saying, however, they can cross this Bhava Sindhu. Sindhu is ocean and Bhava is nations. So they can cross this Bhava Sindhu in Plava. Plava is boat made of Anuvarna, made of the constant recitation. So Varnam means to describe, and Anuvarnam means to constantly describe what? Haricharya, the pastimes of Hari. And why is Narad Muni saying this now? He says, Drishta. He says, because this is my personal experience. So he's saying, Vyas, I've just told you that by my own personal experience, by my Drishta, so Drishta literally means vision, but also means that as experienced by me. So he's saying, by my own personal experience, I can tell you that this atura chittanam of people in general that is caused by matra sparshas can and will be cured by haricharya anuvarnana. So in the very first canto, first chapter, the sages of Naimisharanya, they had glorified the meeting with Sutta Goswami, saying that we think we have met you by the will of providence, just so that we may accept you as the captain of the ship for those who desire to cross the difficult ocean of Kali, which deteriorates all the good qualities of a human being. So same metaphor is used over here. So the boat that Narad Muni is offering to Srila Vyasadeva and to us, Plava, the boat that is offering is Haricharya Anuvarnanam, to cross over this um, this ocean of nations, this Bhavasindhu. So Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he gives us guidance on how one can activate this principle in one's own life. So he says that Narad Muni, by his personal experience, says that satisfaction for such frustrated beings engaged in sense gratification is to chant always the activities of the Lord. The point is that the subject matter only should be changed. No one can check the okay. The point is that the subject matter only should be changed. No one can check the thinking activities of the living beings, nor the feeling, willing, or working process. So Prabhupada makes the point that everybody has this propensity to engage the senses somewhere. Even if it is in terms of the nature of the tongue is to speak, the nature of the mind is to think, everybody is doing that. But the point that Prabhupada is making, that only thing is that the subject matter needs to be changed from mundane topics to Krishna conscious topics. And what is the result of that? Prabhupada continues, he says that the Almighty Personality of Godhead, by His causeless mercy, descends on the earth and manifests activities almost on the line of the worldly man, but at the same time extraordinarily, because He is Almighty. He does so for the benefit of all conditioned souls, so that they can turn their attention to transcendence. So sometimes people ask that why does Krishna come and perform all these activities? And the underlying tattva is being explained over here. That by meditating on the activities of the Lord, one can achieve perfection. And in order for us to give us something to meditate on, Krishna comes, He descends, and He performs this wonderful activities. And these activities are recorded by His devotees, and for time immemorial, they have been chanted and discussed and glorified as a way to achieve perfection in one's spiritual life. So Prabhupada concludes, says, and we can have the same experience also if you begin to follow the footsteps of the great sage, the dearest devotee of the Lord. So basically, the footsteps of Narad Muni. Okay. Questions, comments? We'll do the next verse then. Yamadibir yoga pata ahe kam lobhato moho mukund sevaya yadvat tatha atma dana shamyati. It is true that by practicing restraint of the senses by the yoga system, one can get relief from the disturbances of desire and lust. But this is not sufficient to give satisfaction to the soul. For this, satisfaction is derived from devotional service to the personality of Godhead. So these verses are summation of the points that Narad Muni had made to Vyas earlier on. So in the 5th chapter, from verses 8 to 15, Narad Muni had condemned Vyasa's encouragement through the Vedas to follow the path of karma and jnana. Here he is also rejecting the path of the more exalted and difficult path of Astanga Yoga. So one who has progressed through the path of karma is able to develop material detachment, which is freedom from lobha. And one who has progressed the path of jnana is able to develop sense control, which he calls calm over here. So once one has transcended lobha and calm, then one is qualified to follow Astanga Yoga, the eightfold process of yoga, which begins with Yamadubhi, which is Yam means self-restraint, Yamadubhi means practicing self-restraint, and culminates in Samadhi. So this is why Narad begins this verse by saying that Yogapati Kama Lobha Hatamu. So he says that in this path of yoga, now he's referring to Astanga Yoga, Kam Lobha Hataha Muhu. So Hataha Muhu is always curtailed. Muhu means always, and Hatha is curtailed. So he says that in this part of Astanga Yoga, one has already transcended karma and gyan, which is manifested by the fact that Kam and Lobh is Hatha Moho. But he says that even in this exalted state, he says, Adana Shamyati. So for all practical purpose, there is no satisfaction. Because he's saying this satisfaction can only be achieved by Mukunda Sevaya Yadvat, by the service of Mukunda. And Narad Muni deliberately uses the name Mukunda because Mukunda's meaning is one who gives liberation. So that is true liberation. So liberation is not a stage of neutrality. By practicing karma and gyan, and even the stage of Astanga, one can get freedom from greed and desires. One can get freedom from unhappiness or dissatisfaction, but one will not get satisfaction. One will not get. So happiness is not the absence of grief. Absence of grief is just neutrality. Happiness is a sentiment in its own self that needs to exist. At that point, so Sridhar Swami says that can only be achieved by service to Krishna. So in the commentary for this text, Sridhar Swami says that a little service to Krishna pacifies the soul. What can be said of the effect of describing his glories? So he's making the point that the glorification of Krishna is big service as opposed to little service. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the whole idea is that without devotional service of the Lord, neither the yoga system nor dry philosophical speculation can ever become successful. Pure devotional service of the Lord without being tinged with fruitive work, mystic power, or philosophical speculation is the foremost procedure to attain self-satisfaction. So does anybody know which verse Prabhupada is quoting over here?
From Bhagavad Gita, Prabhuji?
No, this is from Nectar of Devotion. So actually, even I have forgotten the verse, the first line, but this is the Jnana Karmadhi Anavritam Anukula.
Anya Abhilashita Shunyam.
Anya Abhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karmadhi Anavritam Anukulena Krishnanu Anushilanam. Prabhupada is quoting that verse. He's saying pure devotion of the Lord without being tinged, Jnana Karmadhi Anavritam. He says without being tinged with fruitive work, mystic yoga, or speculative philosophy is the foremost procedure to attain self-realization. Such devotional service is transcendental in nature, and the system of yoga and gyan are subordinate to such a process. When the transcendental devotional service is mixed with the subordinate process, it is no longer transcendent, but it is called mixed devotional service. So if you remember from Bhakti Shastri, when this verse is discussed, then it is mentioned that the two primary qualities of bhakti is anukulena krishnanu anushilanam bhaktiruttam. And anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karmadhi anavritam are the three secondary qualities. So the primary qualities need to be there for an activity to be called bhakti. And the secondary qualities make it Shuddha Bhakti. So if there is bhakti that has jnana or karma or yoga in it, then it becomes Mishra Bhakti. So that's why Prabhupada said that it is no longer transcendental but mixed devotional service. Srila Vyasadeva, the author of Srimad Bhagavatam, will gradually develop all these different systems of transcendental realization in the text. So Srimad Bhagavatam is there to guide us from the path of materiality to spirituality, and then from the path of mixed spirituality to Shuddha Bhakti, to pure devotional service. Okay, then next verse, 1636. Questions, comments on this?
Prabhuji, like, so is it because that we are not practicing pure devotional service that we are not able to get that self-satisfaction yet?
That is the essence of this verse, that the Atma Tushti, the self-satisfaction that is the symptom or the benediction of Shuddha Bhakti, it grows in proportion to the extent that we practice it. So we experience it. That's why we are there in the process, despite the other challenges from our senses or from the environment, etc. So the taste keeps us there, but we do not experience it completely because our bhakti is still mishra, still very much mixed with karma and gyan, not so much by Astanga Yoga, but mostly by karma.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, 1636. Sarvam taditam akhyatam yat prasto aham tvaya angaha tvaya anagaha janma karma rahasyam me bhavatas-chatma toshanam. Actually, that's interesting. Atma toshanam. That's pretty much the answer to your question, Achyuta. O Vyasadeva, you are freed from all sins. Thus I have explained my birth and activities for self-realization, as you asked. All this will be conducive for your personal satisfaction also. So in verse 22 of this chapter, Krishna had affectionately addressed Narada as Anaga. So Anaga is one who is free from all sins, or one who is virtuous. So Narada is now using the same term for Srila Vyasadeva. And so he is calling Vyasadeva Tvaya Anaga to indicate that he is also worthy of the same status, glorification, love, and respect. That just like Krishna was calling him virtuous and free from all sins, Vyasadeva is also the same. So we see that Narada is now setting up Vyasadeva to write the Bhagavatam. And as an expert preacher, he has pointed out his deficiencies. He has explained to him how he can remediate it. And now he's encouraging him to say that you are qualified to do it. So it's not that he just beats upon Vyasadeva and leaves. Sometimes we see that the mood of the preachers is that they just beat up the other person, and then they walk away. So that's preaching that you're living like cats and dogs, and you'll take birth as an animal again, or you'll become a demon, you're a meat eater, this, that, there's no hope for you, my job is done, and I'll see you again, or I hope not to see you again, and they walk away. But Nand Muni is the best of the preachers. And we see how expertly, I mean, of course, Vyasadeva is at a whole different level, but we see how expertly he is preaching to Srila Vyasadeva. That initially he glorified him, then he very clearly and almost brutally, he pointed out his deficiencies. But then he didn't leave it over there. Then he established his own credentials. That why am I qualified to tell you what I'm telling you? By his own personal realizations, by his own experiences. And then after establishing his credentials, he gave Srila Vyasadeva the solution. And after giving the solution, he is now encouraging Srila Vyasadeva in a genuine way that you're more than qualified to adopt this path. It's not that I am here and you're there. He's saying Krishna called me Anaga, and you are Anaga also. So he says the Janma Karma Rahasyam. So he says I have given you the inside scoop of my life and activities. And then he says Yat Prishta Aham Tvaya, and have also answered all your questions. So he says, why did I do that? He says that Bhavata cha Atma Toshana, for your self-satisfaction. But the self-satisfaction is not satisfying the curiosity of Srila Vyasadeva. It goes much beyond. He says Atma Toshana. So Atma Toshana means satisfaction of the self, also satisfaction of the soul. So Narad Muni says that all that I have given to you is because Narad Muni came because Vyasadeva was feeling unsatisfied from within. So he has given this to address that dissatisfaction. He has answered his questions. He has explained to him the intricate details of his life. And Narad Muni uses the word cha. Cha means also, to indicate that he has done it for two reasons. One is to help Srila Vyasadeva. The second is so that Srila Vyasadeva can help others. So both these have been done in this interaction. Narad Muni did not just take care of Vyasadeva's need and walk away, even though that would have been, as a spiritual master, that would have been glorious in itself. But understanding the potency of Srila Vyasadeva, he is saying that just like I have satisfied Atma Tushtaha, that just like I have satisfied yourself completely, you should do the same for others. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, the process of devotional activities from the beginning to the stage of transcendence are all duly and explained to satisfy the inquiries of Vyasadeva. Narad has explained how the seeds of devotional service were sown by transcendental association, how they gradually developed by hearing the sages. And then Srila Prabhupada goes through and walks us through the different stages of bhakti. So we see Prabhupada do that very often, that he talks about the stages from Adho, Shraddha, Sadhu, Sang, Bhajan, Kriya, etc. He won't go through each and every stage, but he continues to do so with different levels of granularity. And we had discussed this earlier on, that Prabhupada always wants to bring this to personal experience. And that's why whenever we read it, Prabhupada is laying down a map with a path on it, and then we can see where we are on the path. To some extent, it encourages us because we say, okay, yes, we have faith, we are practicing, to some extent our anarthas are going. So what is being promised in the future will also happen, and to some extent for us to reach. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes that all the mysteries of transcendental realizations are truly experienced by Narad Muni himself, and therefore by hearing such an authority, one can have some idea of the results of devotional life, which are hardly delineated even in the original text of the Vedas. In the Vedas and Upanishads, there are only indirect hints to all this. Nothing is directly explained there, and therefore Srimad Bhagavatam is the mature fruit of all Vedic trees and literatures. So that is why the Bhagavatam has personal experiences and realizations, of spiritually advanced souls, or souls who are on the path of spiritual advancement. And that's why Prabhupada in the purport, he keeps emphasizing on this journey, because we are all on a spiritual journey. And when traveling, one of the main things that we keep meditating on is where we are and where we are and where we want to be. So this is what Prabhupada keeps on a fairly regular basis reminding us through his purports. Okay, questions, comments?
Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Prem Kishore Prabhu.
Dhanat Prabhu. The last point which you made, where we are and where we want to be. The question here really is, we do have, like in the earlier verse, you also said we need to follow the footsteps. Either it is a Narada or our own acharyas or spiritual master. But we try to waver in, you also said, based on our karma and gyan, right? Like, what is the message here for aspiring devotees here? Like, I don't know where we want to be. Is again, we need mercy of Guru to know where we want to be based on our, like, we don't know what our position is, right? I don't know if I am clear in my question. Basically, how to know our position. That is the.
Right. Thank you. So as sadhakas or practicing devotees, we're a lot of stuff is happening for us in parallel. So at least philosophically, things are explained as if they're happening sequentially. And then they have to explain that, because that's how we can understand the stages of bhakti, from Shraddha to Sadhu Sangha, etc. Then the more generalized advancement of a devotee from Sambandh to Abhiday to Prayojan. It appears that they are happening sequentially. One gets Sambandh Gyan, after that one, based on Sambandh, one practices Abhiday, and then one reaches Prayojan. As we practice bhakti, it is sequential, but it is also recursive. So the question that you were asking is that clear understanding of where we are. It's Sambandha Gyan. That's the basis of one's endeavor in devotional service. Now, we are also practicing devotees. We are also in the stage of Abhiday. We also, as we had discussed, experience maybe to a limited extent, maybe intermittently, but we definitely experience happiness in Krishna consciousness, which is Prayojan. But we could do that even when our Sambandh Gyan is not completely mature. So on some understanding of a relationship with Krishna, we do some kind of devotional service, which gives us some kinds of realization, which improves our understanding, and then this basically it spirals upwards from there. So philosophically, we know that we are the eternal soul, Krishna is God, we have to serve him. That's a relationship. Now, do we know it experientially? Do we have the realization? We don't. For the most part, we aspire to have it. We have glimpses of it, but we do not have the complete realization. We follow the path of bhakti. We do deity worship. We do chanting of the holy name. But because our sambandh is not fully clear, our abhiday is also covered. Our chanting could be mechanical. Our deity worship could become external, but we still get realizations out of it. We still get prayojan out of it. So, so the answer to the question that I think that you were trying to ask is that are we fully situated in our relationship with Krishna right now? The answer is yes and no. Philosophically, we hope so. Yes. Experientially, I would say that is where work in progress. It is a process of bhakti that hopefully in this lifetime, but in due course of time, will continue to refine this realization till the time that it becomes as is explained in the scriptures, that we are firmly situated in the position of being the eternal servant of Krishna and his devotees.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Good question. Anything else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu, just some obeisance.
Hare Krishna Saran Prabhu.
Just a comment on this. There's a verse that the rightful claim of a son, to the father is just you just have to stay alive in the practice, and
Right.
The goal of Prabhu Bhakti will come.
Right. And I think that point is often made that, and it points to the earlier points of being steadfast and patient. That I don't remember the particular verse, but I remember the translation. Saran Prabhu saying that a son stands to inherit all the wealth of the father simply by staying alive. So similarly, if we just stay alive in bhakti, then eventually we will get the promised inheritance, which is Krishna Prema. And that's been endorsed. Okay, so we'll do any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhu, a similar question in the lines of Prem Kishore Prabhu asked, like a devotee, okay, tries to do devotion, takes the process and does it, may not be getting complete success. Say when we see we see great devotees like Maharaj or Nityananda Pran Prabhu or yourself. So when we see you people are properly situated, and somebody who starts and may not be taking the process fully and tries to do with his capacity. So we hear in Bhagavad Gita, Suchiman's Sriman Gehe. So he takes birth and like that. So is two aspects of it. One, when we see in our lives, we don't see we are so much becoming a pure devotee, or it's not going to happen very near future. Probably Krishna will not allow a person 100%. He is not pure. He will not allow in Golaka, so as not to create disturbance there. So in that sense, uh, like this person who is a bit incomplete, and he will have to wait till whenever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu comes next, or because he has associated with the devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I just wanted to understand a bit more from you, Prabhu, on that.
Thank you, Prabhu. So in terms of, I mean, I guess a couple of points you made are obviously very correct. That yes, one who has embarked on the path of devotion will eventually attain perfection. How soon is the perfection attained is different. For some people, they have been practicing devotional life in previous lives. For some people, the desires are very strong. For some people, the mercy is very strong. So everybody makes advancement according to their own situations. But but the perfection is guaranteed. Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada and Guru Maharaj, they've all said that this process is irreversible and immutable. How does that perfection come? That's something between the devotee and his Guru Maharaj and Krishna. Not necessarily that you have to wait for another birth or another coming of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Srila Prabhupada would say that you should not even wait for another birth. You should perfect your spiritual life in this very birth and leave. Bhaktisiddhanta would say that this material world is a dangerous place. And to some extent, devotees who take birth again, Krishna does give them the opportunity to continue with the devotional life by giving them either association of devotees or the mercy. He also gives them opulences, and to some extent the opulences could be distracting. So Bhaktisiddhanta would say that you give up your life as a devotee, and Krishna, being affectionate to the devotees, reciprocates by giving them birth in rich and famous families, which could be distractions. So don't mess with Maya that way. So our realization or our reflection should be that rather than wondering about all this, we should focus on what we can control. And what we can control is our sadhana. We can control our chanting. We can control our study of the Shastras, following the instruction of the Guru Maharaj. So to the best of our ability, we do what we control, and then we let other things happen. We let the mercy of Krishna happen, let the mercy of Guru Maharaj and devotees happen. Going back to the spiritual life, let that happen. It's anyway not within our control. So one of the definition of worries is thinking about things that you cannot control. So why worry about things that we have no control on? But we do have control on these things. We have control on our japa. We have control on our being in the mode of goodness, following the regulative principles. We have control on choosing to associate with devotees. And as long as we follow that, whether it is sooner or later, the goal will be achieved. Okay, so I'll do the next verse, 1637. Sutta vacha evam sambhasaya bhagavan narado vashavi sutam amantraya vinam ranayan yayu yadrichaka munihi. Sutta Goswami said, thus addressing Vyasadeva, Srila Narad Muni took leave of him, and vibrating on his veena instrument, he left to wander at his free will. So the previous verse was the end of Narada-vacha, was the end of the conversation between Narad and Vyas. Now, Sutta Goswami is back on the speaker seat. So he's saying that evam sambhasya Bhagavan. So he says that sambhasya means addressing. So Narad addresses Sutta Goswami addresses Narad as Bhagavan, and he addresses Vyasadeva as Vasavi Sutam. So it's not a very commonly used name of Vyasa, but Vasavi Sutam means the son of the daughter of Vasu. So we had read a little bit about the antecedents of Srila Vyasadeva, and to some extent, Sutta Goswami is bringing to our attention the parallels between Vyasadeva and Narad Muni. So Narad Muni has just shared that in his previous life he was Dasi Putra. He was the son of a Dasi. Sutta Goswami is calling Vyasadeva as Vasavi Sutam. So the mother Vyasadeva is Satyavati, and who was so Satyavati was a Dasi because she was born in unconventional circumstances. So if you remember that, or Vyasadeva was born in unconventional circumstances. So if you remember that there was a fish, and in the fish was found, the fish was impregnated by uh, um, what was the name? Forget the name of the king. But the hawk was carrying his semen. The semen. No, not Shantanu. So, but the point that is being made over here is that just like Narad is Dasi Putra, Vyas is also Dasi Putra. So I'll keep thinking about the name. Let me see if I have it somewhere. Just give me 1 minute. Right. So his name was Uparachir Vasu. So Uparachir Vasu was a descendant of the Kuru dynasty, and it was his semen that was being carried by the hawk that fell into the fish, who was an Apsara, cursed Apsara by the name of Adrika. And because of that, Satyavati was born, and Bhishma would actually call Satyavati as Dasi, essentially because she was brought up in the clan of fishermen who were Dasyas. And here he's being addressed as Vyasadeva is addressed as the son of as the son of the daughter of Vasu. Let me get back to the. So Vyasadeva, so Narad was born out of wedlock, in the sense he did not know his father, and Srila Vyasadeva and Satyavati were not married when Vyasadeva was Parashar Muni and Satyavati were not married. So we see there are certain parallels. But even though these are great personalities, they had very humble beginnings. They were born in circumstances that would be considered as unfavorable. Born in Dasya families, born out of wedlock. But Sutta Goswami, he's addressing Narad as Bhagwan to glorify his exalted spiritual position. Why? Because of Vinam Ranyam. Because of the process of bhakti. So the point that he's making is that regardless of where you come from, the glorious position that you occupy is because of how well are you connected with Krishna and his devotees. He's making that point Narad Muni has made himself in his in recounting his own antecedents, and through wordplay, Sutta Goswami is saying the same also applies for Vyas. That Vyas is undoubtedly an exalted person, but he also has similar origins. So the verse ends with the term with Yadrichikaha, which means which is pointing to Narad Muni, that he is Yadrichika Muni, that wherever he wills, wherever willing. And Prabhupada said every living being is anxious for full freedom because that is his transcendental nature. And his freedom is obtained only through the transcendental service of the Lord. So the reason that Narad Muni is free to wander everywhere is not because he has escaped the control of Krishna, but because he has given full control to Krishna. So sometimes people look upon bhakti as a restrictive process, that there are so many do's and don'ts in the process of bhakti. I remember once I was sharing something with a friend of mine, and it was not he's not a devotee, but sometimes this devotee speak comes in, and I think I was sharing that uh, um, um, uh, that I had gone to some place, and there was a book over there. So I had a lot of fondness for reading all kinds of books, especially fiction books. And then I said, oh, I found this book, and it had so many memories. It brought so many memories to me. And he said, do you still read? And then I said, I don't read. I read other kinds of books now. And then he said, what is it with you devotees? You guys are always like denying yourself everything. That you don't want to eat, you don't want to read what you like, you don't want to do stuff that people like. So, what kind of a God do you have who's making you guys so miserable? And we had some discussion at the time. But when I was reading this verse, I was reflecting on that uh, all these so-called restrictions that either we voluntarily accept or are given to us through the instructions of our preceptors, these are restrictions that actually give us real freedom. So the reason Narad Muni is Yadrasha is because he's fully surrendered to the instructions of Krishna. And the result is now he can travel everywhere, anytime, as he pleases. So just like a child, when he obeys the instructions of the parent gives them not only love, but a lot of independence and freedom. And the more the child rebels, initially the parent might restrict them, then the state might restrict them, they may be put in jail. So the freedom gets, so the so-called exercising of one's independence actually further and further restricts one freedom. And we see the opposite in the case of Narad Muni. Okay, 1638. Any questions, comments on this? Aho devarshi danyoyam yatkirtim sarangadanvanaha kayan madhyanidam tantrya ramyate aturam jagat. All glory and success to Sri Narad Muni, because he glorifies the activities of the personality of Godhead. And so doing, he himself takes pleasure and also enlivens all the distressed souls of the universe. So in the commentary to this verse, Sridhar Swami, he says that one should glorify a person who glorifies Krishna. And the reason is that as one glorifies a person, one also develops the same qualities. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur makes this point that when one criticizes a person for a fault, then one begins to develop that fault. And when one praises a person for a glorious quality, then one begins to develop that quality. So Sridhar Swami is appreciating the fact that Sutta Goswami here is inviting all of us to glorify Narad Muni, because Narad Muni is glorifying Krishna. And the reason that is glorifying Krishna is that not only is Krishna becoming happy, Narad Muni himself is becoming happy, and the distressed souls of the universe are also becoming happy. So sarva sukhina, everybody is becoming happy. So this is not really a labor of love. It is simply an exposition of love. That one who glorifies Krishna, he feels happy. Krishna, we have seen Prabhupada explaining that how when Krishna listens to his own pastime, he becomes happy. And when other people either listen to this glorification or when other people glorify this person who is glorifying Krishna, they also feel happy. So Suta addresses Narad by his current title. So he's no longer Dasi Putra. He's Devarashir. That is sage of the gods. And he says all glories. Aho, to what? To the kirtan of Saranga Dhanvana. So Sharang is the name of the bow of Krishna. And Dhanvana is, so Dhan means wealth. Literally it means that one whose wealth is Sharang. Also means that one who carries the sarang bow. So that is what is kirtan. The root word of kirtan is kirti. So kirti means glorification. So the kirtan gayan of Krishna is the only way for. So Sutta Goswami says, Ramyati Aturam Jagat, that to give pleasure to the distressed world. Now, this is more in context of preaching. It is actually Ramyati Jagat, that everybody gets pleasure, even when the person is liberated. And we'll see this question coming later on in the next chapter. But even if a person is liberated, they also get Ramyati. They also get pleasure from glorification of Krishna, but specifically for people, the Aturam Jagat, people who are materially distressed, they derive even more pleasure because they are currently experiencing the hard end of the material energy. So in earlier on in the chapter, Narad Muni had described his own situation at losing the sight of Krishna as Atura, as aggrieved and anxious. In 2 verses away, Krishna in 21 verse had spoken. He said, Krishna has said Hanta, which he said that with regret I speak about Narad's inability to see him because of avipakva, because of his immature bhakti. So the point is that this disconnect between Krishna and the jiva is this cause of dissatisfaction at both ends. The jiva becomes atur and Krishna becomes hanta. Krishna becomes regretful and the jiva becomes anxious. So it's not a good situation for anybody. And Narada is being glorified because he's bringing relief. So he's bringing relief to the anxious jivas, and he's pleasing Krishna also. So Prabhupada says that is the mission of all genuine devotees of the Lord, following the footsteps of that great sage. So when we preach to ourselves. So we make advancements, we bring relief to the materially conditioned souls, and we please Krishna and our Guru Maharaj. So it is an all-around win situation. So this ends the chapter of the conversation between Narad Muni and Srila Vyasadeva. The essence being that by engaging in devotional service, especially by chanting the glories of Krishna, one gets complete freedom from the miseries and one gets to associate with Krishna in the spiritual world. Okay, so rather than starting with the 7th chapter, I will actually stop over here and see if you have any comments or discussions. These chapters are philosophically deep in a way because they are talking a lot about our own situation, and that way they give us an opportunity to some extent being validated that what we are experiencing um, is not entirely uncommon, and also it makes us hopeful that if Narad Muni experienced this and we are experiencing that, then eventually we can be where Narad Muni is. Okay, so I'll stop here and see if there's any questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, here Sarangadas.
Yes, Prabhu, continue.
We very often hear about the cometa from Siddhartha Swami. And I wanted to know, when was he alive and what period?
So Sridhar Swami, he's so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he appeared in the 15th century, and Sridhar Swami preceded him, I believe, by about 2 centuries. I'm not 100% sure, but I know that he preceded Mahaprabhu by a few hundred years.
That's why I heard also Chaitanya Mahaprabhu liked to hear his comment. No, he cries sometime when he hears his comment.
He did, and Mahaprabhu actually exclusively focused on the commentary of Sridhar Swami, who was actually an impersonalist. He was a Mayavadi sage, but that's a separate discussion. That to some extent he did what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did to a lesser extent. That Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also took initiation in a Shankara Sampradaya, and because that was the most powerful and potent Sampradaya at the time. But under the guise, he preached bhakti. And Sridhar Swami was also exemplifying the similar mood, that he wrote what was supposedly an impersonalist commentary, but it was basically imbued with bhakti and devotion. And that's one reason why Mahaprabhu appreciated him very much.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Okay, anything else? Any other questions, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. In the previous verse, Prabhu, you said the do and don't in the process of bhakti. In that context, we said we do certain activities in a restrictive manner where it leads to real freedom, not the material freedom, right? Where we are voluntarily accepting those restrictions. At the same, my question is really, we see in that context as a material, and whoever we deal with, in your analogy, you said someone asked why not to read a book, right? So maybe I'm not putting the proper question here. How even we need to make them the material oriented people. I wouldn't even say them as a, I would call them as a devotee at a different level. Maybe those perspectives within them has not sprouted. So is it not wise on our end to see, okay, if they are not seeing what we are seeing, we need to influence them in what they have to see? That is the real book, like a devotee or a process of bhakti.
It is, I agree with you. It is, preaching is very context sensitive. It depends on the relationship you have with the person. The principle is sound. I think you're talking about principles right now, and that is sound. Yet yes, any opportunity that you get, uh, we try to steer them towards spirituality. How that manifests is dependent on so many things. Uh, uh, if you're talking, this particular person I was talking to is my high school friend. We were in school together, and I think he was recollecting the fact that in school I used to borrow books from him all the time, go to the library. So we have a very peer-to-peer kind of a relationship. Difficult for me to preach to him because the relationship does not it does not encourage that kind of a back and forth. But uh, preaching takes many forms. It could take the form of just being who you are, and like Rampat Maharaj mentions that sometimes just by seeing you, people get inspired to follow. They see that you're peaceful. They see that you're less atura, less anxious, and then they try to either ask you or somebody else, what's the secret sauce, and then start making inquiries. When I was in India this time, I was kind of surprised to find out that because our discussions are my wife puts them on Facebook, that there are so many people who are watching these discussions, or either some part of it, and then they were asking questions. Some of them were making fun, but some of them were asking questions about you mentioned this, you mentioned that, and I was reflecting that it's a safe way to preach. That they would be a little uncomfortable if I came to them and I started, telling them stuff, but in the comfort of their house and with the freedom to select and reject whatever they want, they can hear, listen to something, and meditate on that. Some of them connected back to me. A lot of them did not. So in principle, yes, we do want to connect everybody to Krishna. In actuality, we do it in a way that is conducive. Right? If you preach to everybody, you might turn off a lot of people. That's why Krishna in the end of Bhagavad Gita says that, he says, be selective with whom you share this conversation. I've had personal experience of unfortunately turning people away from Krishna consciousness because I preach strongly to them, and I still regret that it would have been better for me to have maintained a material relationship with them and not preached, than to have destroyed my both their relationship with me and the potential of them taking to Krishna consciousness.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Nice practical question. Okay, so if there is nothing else, we'll end early today. Thank you very much. Look forward to being with you next week. Vancha kalpatarubhayaschet kripa sindhubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrinda ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much. Prabhu.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare